Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the channel where we bring you the most touching, heartfelt stories that remind us of what truly matters. Today, I've got a story that's going to stay with you. It's about an 8-year-old girl with a question so powerful it brought an entire room to silence, including none other than Donald Trump. But this isn't about politics. It's about faith, loss, and the kind of courage that moves people to tears. So grab a cup of coffee, settle into your favorite chair, and get ready for a story that'll warm your heart and maybe even make you think a little deeper about your own journey of faith. Let's dive in. The Church Fellowship Hall in Charleston, South Carolina, buzzed softly with the scrape of folding chairs and quiet conversation. Normally a space for potlucks and Bible studies, tonight it held an unusual guest, Donald Trump. His unmistakable orange-tinged complexion and signature gestures filled the room, but his demeanor was unexpectedly subdued, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. The audience, a mix of families, retirees, and curious locals, listened intently. Among them sat 8-year-old Emma in her best Sunday dress, clutching an old leather-bound Bible, an heirloom from her late grandmother, its gold lettering worn with age. Her mother had whispered before they arrived, "You can ask him, but only if you're brave enough." Emma had nodded, her heart pounding. For weeks she'd rehearsed her question, one that had grown heavy in her young heart. As Trump spoke about policies and achievements, the crowd responded politely, but the energy was tepid. When the floor opened for questions, adults quickly lined up to ask about local issues and national policies. Emma hesitated, shrinking into her chair until her mother gave a subtle nudge. Her small hands gripped her Bible as she joined the line, whispers rippling through the room. When her turn came, Trump's expression softened. "What's your question, young lady?" he asked gently. Emma swallowed hard, her voice trembling but steady. "Mr. Trump, what does God mean to you?" The room fell into an uneasy silence, the weight of her question hanging in the air, pressing on everyone present. Trump didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at Emma, then at the worn Bible clutched tightly in her small hands. Something in his demeanor shifted, and for a moment the air in the room felt heavy with anticipation. The silence was almost deafening, especially for a man known for quick comebacks and unshakable confidence. He stared at Emma, his usual bravado giving way to something softer, even vulnerable. Donald Trump shared a deeply personal story about his struggles with faith, one that offered a rare glimpse into his more vulnerable side. He spoke of his brother Fred, a kind-hearted man whose untimely passing left Trump grappling with anger and confusion. "I was angry at God," he admitted. "I couldn't understand why someone so good could be taken so soon." For a long time, Trump turned away from faith, struggling to reconcile the pain of loss with the belief in a higher purpose. Yet as time passed, a memory of Fred began to resurface, a quiet, persistent reminder of his brother's outlook on life. Fred had always believed that even in hardship there was meaning to be found. That thought stayed with Trump, slowly rekindling a sense of hope and purpose. He described faith as a journey, comparing it to climbing a ladder. "You don't always see the next step," he said, his tone reflective. "And sometimes it feels like you might fall. But you keep climbing because you know there's something up there, something bigger than yourself, worth reaching for." Trump went on to explain that faith isn't about having all the answers or living without doubts. It's about trust, he emphasized. Trusting that even when life doesn't make sense, there's a plan at work, and that the challenges we face aren't meant to break us, but to make us stronger. His words, delivered with an uncharacteristic vulnerability, left the room in reflective silence. It was a moment that revealed not just his struggles, but also his belief in the enduring power of faith, even in life's most difficult times. Emma's sincerity struck a chord that reverberated throughout the room. Her courage to ask such a profound question shifted the atmosphere entirely, breaking through the surface of polite applause and casual murmurs. It was as if her small voice had unlocked something deeper in everyone present. One by one, members of the audience began to share their own stories. An elderly widow, her voice trembling with emotion, spoke of the profound loneliness she had felt since losing her husband of 50 years. "I pray every day," she said, her hands clutching a handkerchief. "But sometimes I wonder if anyone's listening." A middle-aged man, his shoulders hunched, admitted that he had drifted away from his faith, unable to reconcile his beliefs with the challenges life had thrown his way. "I used to believe in a plan," he said quietly, "but lately I'm not so sure." Trump listened, his usual larger-than-life demeanor replaced by something more grounded and human. When he spoke, it wasn't with the bold confidence of a political rally, but with the gentle humility of someone who understood the weight of their struggles. "Faith isn't neat or perfect," he said, his voice calm and measured. "It's messy. It grows in those little moments we often overlook. Acts of kindness, a glimmer of hope, or even the courage to stand up and ask a question, just like Emma did tonight." He turned back to Emma, his expression softening further. "Emma," he said, his voice carrying warmth and admiration, "you've done something truly remarkable. You've asked a question that most adults are too afraid to ask. That makes you braver and wiser than many people I've met." The room fell silent save for a few quiet sniffles. The weight of Trump's words, combined with Emma's unassuming bravery, had created an unexpected sense of unity. Strangers who had arrived as part of an audience now felt like part of a shared experience. As Trump's gaze swept the room, he added, "Faith isn't about having all the answers, and it's okay to admit when we don't. It's about taking the next step, even when the path ahead isn't clear." He gestured toward the people who had spoken, his voice growing stronger. "It's in moments like this, when we're honest about our fears and our struggles, that we find the strength to keep going." Emma's question had opened a door that no one expected, and as the evening went on, the room felt less like a gathering of individuals and more like a community bound by shared vulnerability and hope. Leave a comment with "1 so I know you're still here with me. I would really appreciate it." What began as a routine political event gradually transformed into something far deeper, a heartfelt discussion about faith, resilience, and the shared humanity that binds us all. Emma's question had opened a door, and Trump's candid reflections invited everyone in the room to step through it. The usual chatter of policy and debate gave way to personal stories and introspection, creating a space where vulnerability felt not only acceptable, but necessary. Trump encouraged the audience to reflect on what faith truly means in their own lives. "Faith isn't about having all the answers," he reminded them. "It's about holding on to hope, even when life doesn't make sense. It's about trusting that there's a purpose in the uncertainty." His words carried a weight that resonated with the crowd, many of whom nodded silently, their expressions thoughtful and reflective. The hall, which had started the evening filled with polite applause and cautious murmurs, erupted into a standing ovation. The applause wasn't just for Trump's words, but for the shared moment, a collective acknowledgement of the power of honesty and connection. As the event came to a close, something remarkable happened. Strangers who moments earlier had been sitting side by side without exchanging a word, now turned to one another with smiles. Hugs were shared, hands were clasped, and stories were exchanged. A grieving widow spoke softly to a young man who had admitted to losing his way. A retired couple, sitting near the back, wiped away tears and smiled at Emma, thanking her for her courage. The hall, usually reserved for routine gatherings, seemed to hum with a renewed sense of warmth and purpose. As people filed out into the cool night air, their steps felt lighter, their hearts fuller. They left not just as attendees of a political event, but as members of a community, bound by a moment of shared vulnerability and hope. For many, the evening had become more than they expected, an experience that reminded them that faith, even in its simplest form, has the power to connect and uplift. As the evening drew to a close, Trump did something unexpected. He stepped away from the podium and knelt down to thank Emma personally. Looking her in the eye, he said softly, "You've shown more courage tonight than most adults ever do. You asked a question that made us all think, made us all feel. And that takes real bravery." Emma's wide eyes glistened with emotion, and she clutched her grandmother's Bible tightly to her chest. Her mother leaned down, wrapping an arm around her shoulders and whispering, "Your grandma would have been so proud of you tonight." The words brought a small, shy smile to Emma's face, even as a tear slid down her cheek. Around them, the audience remained still, watching this quiet, heartfelt exchange. What had started as a formal event had turned into something profoundly personal. Trump stood, glancing back at the crowd, and delivered one final message. The bravest questions often lead to the most meaningful answers. Tonight, we were reminded that faith, no matter how fragile or uncertain, has the power to unite us, to heal us, and to guide us forward. As people began to leave, the room buzzed with quiet conversations and heartfelt goodbyes. Strangers exchanged knowing smiles, shared hugs, and swapped stories, their hearts lighter and their spirits lifted. Many left with a sense of hope they hadn't felt in years, carrying with them the evening's profound message that even in a divided world, moments of sincerity and faith can bring people together in ways nothing else can. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this story reminded you of the power of faith, the courage it takes to ask the hard questions, and the beauty of connection in unexpected moments. What did you think of today's topic? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.